Starting again, Hikaru with the white pieces down 3.5 to 2.5 thus far, and okay, it looks like Hikaru is ready, and he has his webcam about to be ready as well. But you know, hopefully he gets everything under order and the chess gets underway, because
the chess seems to be underway.
The chess is very much underway.
Perhaps it was a bug there where I had to refresh. Yes, indeed. The chess is underway. Sometimes we seem to have an issue where...
Well, probably so many viewers watching the game, and just, you know, it's a lot to handle. But, okay, so we see Magnus retreating the bishop in this Nimzo Indian defense with the black pieces.
And we have both... I apologize for the troubleshooting there. We're just trying to figure out exactly what we can do
to get rid of this c-pawn as quickly as possible. Strike in the center. If you take on c5 with the pawn, once again, this bishop takes c5, and the pawn e3 is a bit weak and hard to deal with. So, yeah, it looks like Magnus really is going back to this idea every game with striking.
And you know, the thing is, if Hikaru Nakamura doesn't win this one as white, it might be time to rethink things, right? I mean, you're looking at a situation where he has repeated this opening now, for those of you just joining us, several times, and Magnus has only had one game, but 2 of those victories, for those of you just joining us, came as black in the exact position you're seeing. Oh, sorry, not the exact, but the same variation. So this idea, this variation of the Queen's Gambit, of the Nimzo Indian, is something that Hikaru Nakamura may be trying to repeat, for those of you who know these players well and follow them over the board, because he got a winning position against Magnus Carlsen at the Zurich Invitational a couple years ago, though he went on to blow that winning position. Maybe he feels like there's something in this line he's not quite getting, but the results say that Magnus is very comfortable here. 2 of his victories in the 3.5 score you see there, everybody, have come from winning this position as black, which is... So again, I would say it's time to either come up with something or switch gears if you're Hikaru Nakamura.
Yeah, he keeps struggling in this opening. I just want to go away from the chess for just a second here. We had a great tweet by Simon Williams, beloved Ginger GM. He goes, GMHikaru is not seen on camera anymore. Rumor has it he has substituted Sergei Karyakin in. That's hilarious. It's a nod to the upcoming World Championship match in New York between Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karyakin. And also, I want to give a shout out to Nualita. I might be butchering the pronunciation of your username on chess.com for leading the Guess the Move with 113 out of 234. So doing quite well there in Guess the Move. And as we get back to the board, we see that Hikaru has put his pawn on g4. Now, we often tell players not to do such a move because it weakens our king, but as we see around this king, there's a bishop and 2 knights. The king is very well defended. There aren't black pieces coming to attack it, and so it is a move that gains space. It limits that bishop on c8. It kind of blunts it, and potentially this knight will jump into f5 at the right moment. So it looks right now like Hikaru with more space probably enjoys this position quite a bit, but as we've said time and time again, he struggles against Magnus Carlsen just in general, but also in the specific opening. So, yeah, here Hikaru has to prove that he has something going for him in the position. A move, I mean, maybe a move at some point, knight to h5 is tempting, but that opens up the queen. So I don't really want to do that. The queen, you can capture and go queen h4, and in fact, you might just get yourself in big trouble immediately. So you have to time that correctly.
The balance here, again, everybody, is you know, white has the pieces on the king side, and hopefully that's going to amount to something before you see this c5 move turning into activity on the that's not going to work.
I think we'll have to just stop and redo it. But for now, knight to b5 is an awkward looking move. But the point is that now that it attacks the pawn on d4, and the knight is actually quite safe on b5. You move like queen to e2, will run into trouble because at some point the bishop will come to a6, and you don't want to line up a bishop with a queen. That's not good for white. And in fact, queen e2 blunders both the knight on f4 and the pawn on d4 at once because the rook on e8. So queen e2 is not a reasonable move.
Not a reasonable move. There's a pin here and a good thing to watch out for. But the position is getting eerily similar to something we've seen earlier already, where Magnus Carlsen has gone on to win once he's established c5 safely on a tactical level. Look for bishop a6. Look for the b file to be used by black. If black's pieces come to life here, Nakamura needs to come up with something against the weak D pawn. We've talked a lot about this pawn structure. It'll be something everyone learns from toward
is
the...
Hikaru back?
Hikaru seems to be back.
Oh,
no,
that just
no, he is not. And we will...
Okay, we will figure this out. I mean, he had to say his webcam died. Nothing you can do when that good old webcam dies. And it looks like Magnus just grabbed a pawn in the center. And, I mean, so what's going on here? Right now, black has 6 pawns. White also has 6 pawns. White has the 2 bishops for the moment, but one of the bishops is bishop on g2, which is blockaded by his own pawn on f3, so not exactly a promising piece. What is nice for white is at some point the knight will hop over to f5, and on f5 it hits g7 in some variations, maybe launching an attack. It supports a thrust with pawn g4 to g5. That's something that black will have to look out for, is pawn to g4 to g5, kicking the knight away from f6, gaining space, trying to push that pawn over to g6. And right now, Magnus went bishop e2. So now the knight can capture on e2, and the rook will come down onto e2, and that's going to be a bit of an issue. And
suddenly we've lost both players in a call, and hoping to reestablish that.
Yeah.
More technical difficulties than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah,
but
we're just trying to call some chess games here, and
hopefully everybody is still enjoying the show. We still got 20,000 of you watching, and apologies for the issues here. We may just have to stick with Magnus right now until Hikaru gets his stuff figured out. So the main issue for Hikaru right now, continued in the match, is his time management. He's down almost 2 minutes once again, and that can't keep happening against the world's best chess player. And so if he continues to be down on time here, he's going to lose the match in the blitz portion, and he better hope that he can turn things around in the bullet.
Yeah, absolutely. But Hikaru's he's not dead in the water right now. Yes, there's this pawn on d4, which is coming down the board, and there is a connected pass pawn because the pawn on c5 supports it. And yes, that knight on b3 is very well placed because the knight there is protected by pawn a4. You can't really kick it. But the good news for Hikaru is now the bishop is out of the box. It was on g2, stopped by the pawn f3. Now g5 and then g6 is a huge threat.
Yep.
And something that black has to be careful dealing with, because rook takes f3 looks nice, but g5 is coming, and in fact that queen will come to f5 once again. I keep saying that's the square that Hikaru loves on f5, and it sure is. And so Hikaru will try his best to launch an attack, especially considering he might lose a pawn in the process. In fact, queen to g6, Danny, is also a threat now because the bishop on c4 pins the pawn on f7 to the king. So
that's a fantastic point right there, actually, because with the pawn not being able to take, the queen might be coming to g6 with double the fun, right? If the queen gets to g6 and hits f7 and is on the battery on the g file, those are tactics that Magnus should be worried about, and his time management is suggesting he's a little worried about it, now starting to really dive in and think here. For those of you just joining us, again, this is the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship Final. The 2 best Blitz and Bullet chess players on the planet, and we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the cameras right now, keeping the players on webcam. Slightly frustrated by that, but we're going to try to keep the commentary rolling here, and we still have 2 full hours in the show to go, so don't go anywhere.
And speaking of rolling, White's kingside attack is now rolling.
Yep.
Because rook h5 is a pretty big threat in some circumstances. Bishop to h4 even. Look at that bishop coming into the action.
Yep.
And it's a discovery attack. Once that rook moves, the queen on d8 will be under attack. So right now, knight d6 does nothing. Bishop d5, in fact, is protected by the rook on g5 and attacks the rook on a8. And queen g6 here is another move that you have to be careful for.
Well, and Magnus and Hikaru says, I don't even care about that because I'm willing...
a checkmate attack is coming.
Yeah, rook takes g7 check.
King takes g7. Rook g1
rook
check.
G1.
King to f8. Oh, well,
I mean, we're going to find out right now.
No, he's going to rook. He might even go... Yeah.
No, I think rook takes g7, king takes, give the check.
He might double his rooks in the g file first.
Maybe just gobble the queen and then continue with the issues here. Rook to g1 check. No, Hikaru says this is good enough. It's a position where even though black has a... Ooh, Ooh,
Yeah,
that may have been a mistake.
I don't really like what Hikaru just did there, honestly.
I don't either. What has happened here? He's going to have to bail out with a draw. If we could see Hikaru on camera, I can almost guarantee a head shake. He might lose this position now. A very misplayed attack there by Hikaru because Magnus was almost dead to rights.
If we just go back a bit, I mean, if we can, we have time for it, just to move after rook takes g7 with 33.
Yeah.
Instead of bishop takes d8, he had rook g1 check first. He missed that. I don't, you know.
Yeah, no, this was a huge improvement. You have to give this check first, let the king get to an awkward square.
No, leave the bishop there,
and then queen h7 guards the bishop and threatens.
It's winning.
Let's show everybody. Rook to g1 check, and then queen to h7.
And queen takes h4, the only move stopping mate. Rook g8 check.
You just check and check.
And check again, and I take your rook, and it's over. So,
right. Honestly, just a terribly misplayed position there by Hikaru. And he offered a draw. Magnus said no, because he thinks he can find a way to escape the checks. And just like Magnus Hikaru turned things around after being lost last game, Magnus did the same here, but this was a true gift from the American. I mean, that position was over, and that was a win that he's going to bag and then come up with a tied score. But with 22 minutes left in the 5-minute portion, he's about to go down by 2 games again. This is not going to be a happy Hikaru after this game.
No, we're going to have to bring out sad Hikaru probably.
Yeah, that was a very, very frustrating.
Wait a second. He might be able to bail out with a draw. I don't see where that king is going. There are a lot of checks.
A lot of checks about to come here.
So, for example, queen.
But I don't know. Somehow I just don't buy it. I feel like it's a matter of geometry at this point.
Queen takes g6 is check. King a5, no more checks. Important.
Just like that, resigns.
Unless
wowzers. I think that Hikaru Nakamura has got to be very frustrated about that, and it's going to be something that. Oh,
so he's going to queen
is there a swindle?
I don't think so, but there are a bunch of checks.
Queen d5.
Yep.
Yeah, Hikaru just resigns.
Yeah.
Wowzers, wowzers, wowzers! A huge, huge victory for Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah.
Just an absolute.